You are listening to the IoT For All Media Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the IoT For All podcast on the IoT For All Media Network. I'm your host, Ryan Chacon, one of the co-creators of IoT For All. Now, before we jump into this episode, please don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or join our newsletter at iotforall.com/newsletter to catch all the newest episodes as soon as they come out. Before we get started, if any of you out there are looking to enter the fast-growing and profitable IoT market but don't know where to start, check out our sponsor, Leverage's IoT Solutions Development Platform, which provides everything you need to create turnkey IoT products that you can white label and resell under your own brand. To learn more, go to iotchangeseverything.com. That's iotchangeseverything.com. So, without further ado, please enjoy this episode of the IoT For All podcast. Welcome, Nate, to the IoT For All show. Thanks for being here this week.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this topic. Let's start out by having you give a quick introduction to our audience. Tell a little bit more about you, your background, experience, kind of how you got into this space, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Nate Clark. I'm 40 years old. I worked in the tech industry in the San Francisco Bay Area for a good chunk of my career. And so my background is mostly in software development and building web applications and a little bit of mobile applications and things like that for about 10 or 15 years. Towards the end of my time in San Francisco, well, what turned out to be the end of my time in San Francisco, I had a problem that I wanted to solve for myself, which was that I was living in a house that had an old wired alarm system, and Sure. It was a rental. And the landlord was like, I don't know how to work that thing. So he's like, do whatever you want with it, which to me was licensed to do whatever I want with it, which I did. So I tried to take it apart and figure out what was going on, how those things worked, and realized that the wired sensors in the home were still perfectly functional, even though the alarm system itself was more or less obsolete. And it was basically just a project for myself that I wanted to be able to monitor the sensors, with a smart home app. And at the time I was using SmartThings, which is a Samsung product. And it already has a really nice built-in security system app. And so that was the goal of mine, was to connect those wired sensors to SmartThings so that I could monitor and control my home alarm system through the SmartThings app. And that's basically how Konnected was born.
So talk me through kind of, how you went from using the SmartThings to connect your alarm system to building your own solution, and kind of what the difference is there from kind of, I guess, current offerings in the market for turning, old alarm systems, security systems into kind of a smart security system.
Yeah, well, it's a good question. Well, the bulk of the DIY security industry is mostly focused on wireless things, wireless sensors and kind of an alarm system in a box. Some of the established competitors in that space would be Simply Safe and Ring. You can buy the alarm system in a box, and it comes with a few sensors that you stick up against the doors and a motion sensor and things like that. And that's great because it's simple and easy for the end user to install. But there are 30 or 40 million homes in North America that are pre-wired for alarm systems. They have the door and the window sensors already built into the door frames, and a motion sensor in the living room. And it's hard to know exactly, but we estimate that at least half of these are basically out of use because the alarm industry hasn't really evolved too much in the last 10 or 20 years. And you still have the keypad on the wall, and you have to remember to arm and disarm it when you leave the house. And that doesn't necessarily fit the app-based lifestyle of today.
Yeah, for sure.
And so the niche that I sort of fell into as I was kind of solving this problem for myself was like, okay, what if we can build a smart device that can basically make the old wired alarm system, the old dumb wired alarm system, smart? And nobody had really done that. In the way that we approached it. There are a couple other products that can interface with an existing alarm system, which is not exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to basically take those sensors themselves and the siren and just make it a fully smart home based system. And the advantages of that are huge. Not only can you, of course, monitor and control your security from a smart home app, but also use all of those sensors for automation purposes too. I mean, of course, you could go online and buy a Z-Wave motion sensor or door sensor, but if it's already wired in your house, then you never have to change the batteries. It's super reliable. They tend to respond a lot faster, the wired sensors do, than a wireless sensor. And so the value proposition of being able to take your home with these, half a dozen or more sensors that are more or less dumb and make them all smart and bring all of that into a smart home system is really, really valuable for the end user.
So what's the reason they would do that as opposed to buying just all the smart sensors and things that are on the market today? Is it like a cost standpoint? Is there an ease of use standpoint? Like what are you seeing when you're engaging with customers as to why they kind of go the connected route versus buying, Ring and those kinds of things and kind of installing them from scratch?
Well, kind of what I just mentioned is if the wired sensors are already in your house, and especially if your house is a little bit larger and you have a dozen or more of them, which a lot of homes do, it definitely is a cost savings, because our product, the Connected Alarm Panel and the new Connected Alarm Panel Pro, can support any number of sensors and a few sirens and outputs and things like that. It's infinitely expandable. And to do that with wireless sensors would be a bit of an upfront investment, and then also changing batteries every 6 months to a year to maintain that. And then if it is a large house, you also have to worry about the wireless signal and interference and things like that. There's also the reliability and just the aesthetic of the wired sensors, which are nearly invisible because they're traditionally like drilled into the door frames, right? So you don't even see them there. The wireless ones kind of stick on the outside of the door frame and are a little bit less nice to look at. Yeah. So there's that, and I think in a lot of people's mind, and it is true that the wired sensors tend to perform more reliably and are faster to respond than the wireless ones. So all around, it's a great value proposition to basically take something that's already in your house and make it smarter and better and more useful than it ever was before, even when it was brand new.
Now, let me ask, is there other potential use cases outside of just doing it in the home? Like what other kind of projects have you guys taken on outside of maybe individual homes? What about like office buildings, schools, things like that? Do you have any kind of real use cases attached to larger operations outside of just an individual's home?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've, especially with the launch of our new Alarm Panel Pro product, which connects via Ethernet and supports power over Ethernet, we've had a growth in interest from commercial properties and some professional installers and access security and access control installers. A couple of interesting use cases. We have a client down in South Florida that's building a high-end residential condominium unit, and they have leak sensors built into the walls in each of the units. And these are basically like when water contacts the leak sensor, then it opens or closes a circuit. And so they were looking to use the Connected Alarm Panel Pro to monitor hundreds of leak sensors into a central dashboard that the building management can then get an alert if there's a leak in any of the units. I thought that was a really neat use case. It's not necessarily security related. We also have a school district in Northern California that is interested in and have started converting some of their old 20-year-old Bosch security systems over to Konnected, because, in a traditional sense, commercial buildings security is something that's sort of owned by the facilities team, and the IT team may be completely separate from security. But those lines are blurring and blending more and more every day. And in this particular school district with a small staff, they don't necessarily have a facilities team to manage the security separately. And their IT department has kind of assumed control of it. And they wanted something that was more adaptable and functional for an IT department, and so that they can manage alerts through through their alerting system and dashboards and things like that.
Right.
The Connected Alarm Panel Pro is a neat solution for them. So they're also interested in. It's another non-residential use case that's been really interesting for us.
So what is the kind of learning curve for somebody that would buy one of your products and kind of install it in their home? Like for instance, let's say you take a home that is kind of has their security system and their sensors are all wired in. What kind of technology background understanding do people need to have in order to do this themselves? Or is it something that is pretty seamless that almost anyone can do?
A lot of people can do it themselves with no problem. I mean, let's be honest, like we do have to do a little bit of work to understand, because everybody's home is different, like which wire goes to which sensor and things like that. And the traditional security installers or whoever originally built your house or your alarm system likely didn't label things very clearly. That's usually the case that we find. And so it takes a little bit of planning to do it successfully, but it's not technically complex at all. Really, and we get this feedback a lot that it looks intimidating from the get-go, and I admit to that it is, because you're going into your closet, you see this bundle of a dozen or more wires coming out of the wall, and you're like, oh my gosh, what I hope I'm doing this right. But I have plenty of videos on YouTube, and we have step-by-step guides. It's really like a matter of just, if you take it one step at a time, almost everybody is successful, and we do have great customer support that can help you if you get stuck. But it's really a matter of just taking the wires from the old system and in turn moving them over to our board. Or in some use cases, we also have a product called the Connected Alarm Panel Interface, which lets you keep the old system and also have the smart home control from your SmartThings or your Home Assistant platform. Okay. And keep and connect them in parallel, more or less. And that works great. Also, that's a little bit more complex installation, but the most of our residential users are replacing an existing alarm system. And it really is just a matter of taking it step by step, and it's pretty hard to mess up. Okay.
And when you mentioned SmartThings, I know you have kind of experience from before, and then what led you to build Konnected. And then I read something, do you guys have some kind of partnership or certification process or program with them? Is there some kind of relationship you guys have with SmartThings?
Yes, we do. Yeah. So I've been working with the SmartThings platform and team for several years, and we finally did, SmartThings has evolved quite a bit in the last couple of years, but we've finally received our official Works with SmartThings partner certification, which is nice. Very exciting. And that just means that, our integrations are officially supported by SmartThings, and all you need is the app, the SmartThings app, which is free to use it. Our SmartThings integration works directly through their cloud platform. So you don't even need the SmartThings hub anymore, which I've come to understand is sort of scarce right now, since they've started outsourcing the hardware manufacturing to AOTech, but that's a different story. And so, the Works with SmartThings partnership has been really exciting for us. And it just validates the idea that people want the control over the existing infrastructure in their house, and to bring it into a modern and consumer-oriented smart home platform like SmartThings.
Gotcha.
And I actually, anecdotally have a number of acquaintances who work for SmartThings who use Konnected in their own home, of course.
Oh, wow.
So
cool.
So that's really great validation for us as well.
Oh, absolutely. That's fantastic. So talk to me a little bit more about, just on a higher level, the kind of DIY security space in general. I'm not very familiar with it. It's obvious. I know, when it comes to IoT, Raspberry Pis, Arduinos, there's tons of the maker community out there doing incredible things with these devices. But just from your perspective, what does the DIY kind of landscape look like as it relates to the security space, from your all's perspective?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, I'm going to leave out like the makers right now, because they, people who are really, into building and making, and that's essentially what I was. And I created my own Frankensteinish version of what became Konnected and decided to refine it into a product. Most makers kind of stop at the walls of their own house.
Gotcha.
But they're going to do what they want to do. And there's a whole bunch of things that makers can do with, you're right, like Raspberry Pis and the ESP32 and boards like that. But the DIY security space is a big and growing industry, and kind of and there's sort of a battle or a cold war going on between the traditional security industry, who are kind of resistant to change from their subscription based or contract based model to the DIY security systems, like coming out of the tech companies, for example, like Ring and Simply Safe and things like that, which also are relying on some subscription revenue, but they also have a functional, app that most of the time that you can use without paying a subscription.
Right.
So, I think there's a lot of churn in the market right now in terms of the security, in terms of DIY security systems, because especially in this year of COVID, the traditional security companies may have not gotten so many new installs because people don't want, a technician coming in their house, in these COVID times. Right. And so DIY and smart home stuff in general have exploded quite a bit in the last year. And we've seen that reflected in our sales as well, which was really interesting. I think the lines are blurring a lot between home security and home automation, and that's a good thing. And it's going to depend on which platforms that consumers really gravitate to, whether it's the the kind of security oriented platforms like Honeywell Total Connector, for example, or Alarm.com, right? Those are the commercial products that the traditional security vendors are selling, versus the consumer oriented platforms like SmartThings or Ring, for example, or Home Assistant, which is an open source thing that you can build yourself.
Right.
So I guess long story short is it's a battle right now, and there's lots of different approaches. And I think the lines are blurring a lot. And so you're going to see more security products that have home automation features and more home automation products that have security features. And pretty soon there won't be a distinction between the two of them.
And when it comes to kind of any DIY type thing, I think there's always this like factor of intimidation on not being able to understand how to do it well. And we kind of already talked about this a little bit, but how do you kind of, what are your thoughts there as far as any type of smart device? Maybe we could focus on smart security here for a second again. But how do you kind of address that intimidating nature of a DIY smart, security solution in general when you're, either marketing the product or talking with customers, potential customers, that kind of thing?
Yeah. So a couple of things. Well, one, we try to create a lot of high quality content, whether it's written or video content on YouTube that really shows what you can do and how to do it. And so that solves a lot. People can learn a lot from YouTube, and really enjoy that channel of education.
Agreed.
But what I'm even more excited about is, as a small company, we're trying to build a network of dealers and installers around the country and around the world who can act as that, do it for me installer kind of. And there's a growing industry that I've seen, and I've talked to dozens, if not hundreds of people like this who are, either independent or small companies who are trying to make a living or build a business out of doing smart home installations and setups for individuals. And, and so we're trying to partner with individuals like that and small companies like that, because Konnected is not a platform in itself like some of our competitors are. because we take the approach of we want to work with the greatest platforms out there and that people want to give the consumer the control, whether that's SmartThings or Home Assistant or Habitat,
right,
which are our most popular platforms. And we're working on others like, with for example, Direct Alexa and Google Assistant integration, which I'm really excited about because those are very popular. But there is a lot of choice and a lot of potential for confusion for somebody who's not already, decided that, oh, yes, I'm going to be a Home Assistant home, or I'm going to be a Habitat home, for example. And so leveraging the expertise of like your local smart home installer company is, I think, an approach that has so far been working out well for us.
Yeah, I actually just had a guest on from Mr. Electric. So it's electrician company that has different groups around franchises around the country, and they have become kind of a local source for smart home installations. They kind of come into a home, see a problem, and they can fix it, or they can upgrade you to kind of the smart side of things. And so that kind of approach is being seen as successful in other areas as well. So I totally get where you're coming from. I think the approach is spot on from a strategic perspective. So that's great.
And I guess I should add that, Konnected really shines when you combine it with other smart home stuff. Like,
makes sense.
For example, a simple automation is turn on the front porch light when the front door opens. And, in order to accomplish that, you would need either a smart light bulb or a smart switch, which, your electrician or smart home guy, or you could install yourself.
Yep.
And then a door sensor on your front door, which Konnected can obviously handle if you have that wired in. And so those types of synergies that when you install Konnected with lighting, for example, or a thermostat, for example, it really just creates more value. And that's what the smart home do it for me installers can help a customer to understand and be successful.
Absolutely. Now, as we wrap up here, I want to ask you kind of a broader question, but how do you see kind of the current smart security landscape? Let's say just generally talking about the smart devices. Let's remove the DIY for a second, and then mixing that back in with the DIY side. As you said, that's a very big and growing area. So how do you kind of see the future of smart security? Kind of where is it now, and kind of where do you think it's going in the let's say 12 to 18 months and beyond that?
Oh, wow. That's I wish I had a crystal ball and I could tell you. I think a lot of things are happening in the security industry in general. And one thing that's, industry wide that a lot of people are talking about is the sunset of 3G, which is happening, I think, scheduled for 2022. I think, although they may have pushed it back. And the reason why that's important is because a lot of security systems that were installed in the last 10 or 15 years have cellular communicators using 3G data to call into their monitoring station. And so those are going to all have to be changed out or upgraded in the next 12 to 18 months in order to when 3G no longer works. And so that's kind of forcing the industry into selling products and services that have additional value other than security. I think that's one of the main shifts as we kind of grow into this millennial and Gen Y, generations, or the generation of cord cutters. They don't necessarily see the value in spending $30 or $40 a month on security monitoring, which is like 3 times their Netflix bill, right? And you get a lot more value out of Netflix on a monthly basis than you do out of some monitoring company. And so if there's any trend that I can predict, it's just that the monthly costs are going to go down as more and more people are balking at those contracts and things like that. The rest of it is hard to predict. I mean, we're seeing some of the traditional security installers moving into the smart home space and trying to add value that way. And just as many of them who are just digging their heels in and resistant to it and think that security is security and smart home is just a toy. And so, I don't know which mentality is going to win out. I think, I have my suspicions, but, I don't have a crystal ball.
I hear you. Well, I appreciate the insights anyways, and your thoughts, because, this is not a topic that we've covered a lot about. I'm not as familiar with the, we talk a lot about security, but not so much on the DIY side. And you raised some very, very interesting points. I think our audience is going to get a ton of value out of kind of learning about this, because I guarantee you a lot of our audience, they're probably, a lot of them are the early adopters of new technology in the IoT space. They have tons of devices in their smart home, in their homes. But at the same time, there's probably a good portion of them who would be willing to go the DIY route. They just don't know much about it. And I think this is going to be a really good education piece, and for them to understand that, look, if you guys are in a home that has kind of a wired in older system, there's something you can do to make it smart to kind of meet up with the standards of everything else that you have in your home. So I think this will be a great conversation for them to learn about, and maybe we can find a way to get even more information, like, articles and things that you write out to our audience, because I think they'd find a lot of value in it. So I really appreciate your time, Nate. This has been great. And thanks for being here.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
What's the best way for the audience to kind of reach out to learn more, kind of engage after this, after they listen to this and want to have, maybe have questions or want to just kind of discover a bit more about what Konnected does?
Yeah. So go to our website, konnected.io. That's spelled with a K, KONNECTED.io. And then I also have a YouTube channel. If you can search for Konnected with a K, you'll find it, where we have, a lot of our how-to installation videos, as well as promo videos and things like that. And a really active Facebook group, the Konnected Users Group on Facebook, where you'll be able to see a lot of stories and photos and questions and answers from our user community.
Fantastic. Well, we'll make sure we link all that up, get that out to our audience when this goes live. And again, Nate, this has been fantastic. Thanks again for your time, and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thanks again for joining us this week on the IoT For All podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please leave us a rating or review, and be sure to subscribe to our podcast on whichever platform you're listening to us on. Also, if you have a guest you'd like to see on the show, please drop us a note at ryan@iotforall.com, and we'll do everything we can to get them as a featured guest. Other than that, thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.